Breaking news, breaking news. Look at this woman right here, everyone. 56-year-old Kimberly Sullivan. We're taking you to Waterbury, Connecticut. House of Horrors. This is an absolute insane, crazy story out of Connecticut right here. This woman has just been arrested in connection with holding her stepson captive inside that home you see right there for 20 years. Like a prison, he was held captive for 20 years. It started when this stepson was around 11 years old. And the stepson finally had enough and had the courage to escape. But what he did, folks, is he set fire to the home. He set fire to the home. The home set afire, blaze. Authorities come to the scene to put out the fire, and then he tells authorities, I've been held captive for 20 years inside this home. Whoa! What in the world is going on here in Waterbury, Connecticut? Come on in, JLR Investigates. This is a house of horrors. We're going to talk about the case of 56-year-old Kimberly Sullivan, who was in court today, by the way. We're going to share a lot of things about this case, including a press conference that authorities talked about, some news clips from media in that area that is reporting this case. We have some names. Now, we know who the victim is, but we're not going to say who the stepson is. He's in his early 30s. He's in his early 30s. There were other people, folks, living in that house along with Kimberly Sullivan. There was others, including a possible child that was running a notary business out of that home. Let's talk. She got a $300,000 bond today, and she goes back to court March 26th. This is sick, folks. The stepson wasn't fed. He was held in prison-like conditions, almost 24 hours a day, locked inside that home. When he finally got the courage to escape, what he did was he set the home on fire so that authorities could come to this Blake Street home in Waterbury, Connecticut. When they found this man in his early 30s, the stepson, they're saying he was 5'9", 68 pounds. Folks, 5'9", 68-pound man. Now, I don't want to be offensive here, but it's almost like the Holocaust. Really sick stuff. We were going to title this video Monster Mom, Monster Mom, Monster Stepmom. It's a stepmother to this man that was held since he was 11 years old. Literally over 20 years, folks. Literally over 20, a little over 20 years. So what we're going to do right now, I want to play this first clip, and then we'll further discuss. So this clip right here we're going to share. It is titled, Waterbury Woman Accused of Holding Malnourished Stepson Captive for 20 Years. Check this out right here.
Thanks so much for joining us here for the News at 5. I'm Keisha Grant.
And I'm Mike Heideck. We'll get to those stories in just a moment. First, though, we are following a story you won't believe. Developing news out of Waterbury. A woman is accused of holding her stepson captive for 2 decades.
According to court documents, it began when he was in the 4th grade. He's now 31 years old. NBC Connecticut's Amanda Pitts digging into this story for us. She's live in Waterbury with the shocking details. Amanda, what can you tell us?
Yeah, Mike, Keisha, these allegations are disturbing to say the least. Kimberly Sullivan is accused of locking her stepson in a room for 20 years. That is until last month when he set a fire in that room to escape. Prosecutors say that move saved his life.
Quite frankly, the facts are something out of a horror movie, and that's without exaggeration.
A horror movie played out inside this Waterbury home for decades, according to investigators who say Kimberly Sullivan locked her stepson in a room for 20 years.
He'd been locked in that room since he was 11. He was given 2 cups of water per day. He'd been locked in there since 4th grade.
On February 17th is when prosecutors say the victim set a fire inside his 8x9 room using hand sanitizer and paper. That's when the fire department responded to the Blake Street home and found the now 31-year-old emaciated.
He lit that fire knowing he could very well die, but he'd been locked in that room for 20 years. And for 20 years, he'd been trying to get out of that room. He'd be let out less than 2 hours a day for chores under the supervision of this defendant. He'd then be locked back in that room. This victim, 31 years old, was 5'9", 68 pounds. He had a body mass index of 11%. Under 13% is life-threatening. He was in the stages of dying.
Sullivan's attorney called the accusations false and put the blame on her late husband.
He was not locked in a room. She did not restrain him in any way. She provided food. She provided shelter. She is blown away by these allegations. He was the biological father. He's the one that dictated how his son would be raised. We think as the evidence comes out, you will see that she's not the villain she's being made out to be.
Now, according to the warrant, DCF was first involved back when the victim was in the 4th grade after he kept complaining that he was always hungry. They made 2 visits to the house, according to the warrant. It's unclear, though, their involvement after those 2 visits. We did reach out to the agency for comment. As for Sullivan, her bond was set at $300,000. She's due back here in court later this month. Live in Waterbury, Amanda Pitts, NBC Connecticut News.
This is crazy, folks. He was on the verge of dying. Miracle that he didn't. House of horror. As you heard the prosecutor describe, he was locked in a room almost 24 hours a day, only came out a couple hours a day to do slave chores. And then he would be locked back up into the room. This is bonkers, folks. I'm shocked she didn't get $1 million bond or $2 million bond. This reminds me of that Castro case in Ohio, in a sense, of those girls locked into that home, right? This guy finally had the courage to set the home on fire as the last resort to get help. And she wants to blame it. Look at that. That's the perp walk. Look at the perp walk. They perp walked her. 56-year-old Kimberly Sullivan. She wanted to blame it on her late husband. I believe his name was Kregg, K-R-E-G-G. According to records out of that home, there was an individual by the name of Kregg S. Sullivan, who was 61 years old, who died January 25th, 2024, was a fitness instructor. What in the world is going on here, people? Look at that home there. Look at that. How it reminds me of like a Rex Heuermann type of home. Creepy. Blake Street. Blake Street. So authorities gave a press conference, folks, today. Just a little bit ago. We have that press conference we are going to share on JLR Investigates. Let's listen to what authorities have to say about this woman here. We'll call her a monster. We're going to listen in.
Morning, everyone. You guys all ready? So we're here to talk about the crime that just occurred that everyone's talking about, and I just want to say that it's truly a horrifying and it's beyond comprehension what occurred here. The young man's unimaginable suffering over the course of 2 decades is just a reminder of the darkness that does exist in our world. Our hearts and our prayers go out to him. We're committed to supporting him in every way possible as he begins to heal from this unimaginable trauma that he suffered. I do want to this morning, though, acknowledge and extend my deepest gratitude to Chief Fred Spagnola and the Waterbury Police Department for their unwavering dedication and relentless investigative efforts, as well as to Waterbury State's Attorney Maureen Platt and her office for their vital role in this case. Their tireless work has led to an arrest But it's crucial to remember that this investigation is far from over, and there's a lot more work to be done. Unanswered questions remain, and we're going to continue to ensure that justice is fully served as more details emerge in the coming months. In the meantime, I would ask that the press and the community respect the young man's privacy as he begins to negotiate what will no doubt be a difficult and painful journey towards recovery. So please keep him in your thoughts and in your prayers. And with that, I will turn it over to Fred Spagnola, our Chief of Police.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation with you. As you all know, on February 17th, around 8:40 p.m., Waterbury Police responded to 2 Blake Street on a report of a fire. Officers and fire investigators immediately realized there were some grave concerns about some of the conditions in the house. There were 2 occupants of the house, one being Kimberly Sullivan, the stepmother of the male victim. Officers and fire investigators quickly realized that there was a room in the house that appeared to have locks on it from the exterior portion of the house. They began to speak to the male victim, who disclosed that he was being held captive in the house for an extended period of time, approximately 20 years. The investigation began from that point. We worked closely with the State's Attorney's Office, Maureen Platt, as well as Assistant State's Attorney Don Thurkelson, because frankly, what was being reported was unfathomable to us at that point in time. Through those investigative meetings and through search warrants, we were able to seize physical evidence and conduct interviews and dig up some more information that corroborated the victim's story. This investigation, as the mayor points out, continues, is very open and very active. We were able to obtain arrest warrants for Kimberly Sullivan. She was arrested yesterday. She was arraigned in Waterbury Superior Court. She's currently being held on a $300,000 bond. At this point, I'll open the floor up for any questions.
The biological father, we've learned that he recently left the home, and her lawyer is saying that we need to look deeper into his part in all of this. When it comes to the investigation, is he being held accountable at all?
The biological father is deceased and died in January of 2024. Prior to his death, he was wheelchair bound from some medical conditions.
Okay. Also, it was reported to the school system that this boy at the time, now 32-year-old man, he was starving, he was asking other kids for lunch. I mean, is this a failure on the school system that this matter was not taken more seriously?
So we're doing some background investigation. There are 2 incidents that we had within our computer system of dealing with that address and with the family back in 2005. One was a request from DCF to do a welfare check at the location because children that the victim was familiar with hadn't seen him and they were concerned about him. Officers went to the house. The house was clean. It was lived in. They spoke to the victim at that point in time, and there were no cause for any alarm or any conditions that existed that would have led officers to believe anything other than a normal childhood and a normal family existence was occurring. That was reported back to DCF, and that was the last that we were involved in that particular investigation. We were called back to the house in the latter part of April by the family, who wanted to file a harassment complaint against members of the school district, saying that they were continuously reporting them to DCF and felt that they were trying to get the family in trouble and have the family investigated. We have no further information about where that went, other than there was no proof provided by the family that there was any type of harassment that was occurring. As far as the school district's concerned, we are looking at those records now. We're working with DCF to look at records that they may have from previous investigations, and that's part of the ongoing investigation.
But Chief, people were filing complaints, even if it was with DCF, continuously, as the family, I guess, alleged. Was there more contact from DCF, and do you know anything about how that worked?
So the only contact we had was back in April of 2005 when we were notified to conduct that welfare check. And again, we're looking for those records now to determine where that investigation may have gone, but there was no further reported information to the Waterbury Police Department.
So when you had an officer go out there that first time, you're saying everything looked normal, it looked like a normal childhood. But the school district, the principal told us that the child looked really small, malnourished, was drinking from a urinal at school, was taking kids' food. So, I mean, with all that information, the officer still concluded that the child was safe at that time?
Well, the officer didn't have that information. So this former principal is now disclosing all this information, and I believe in the news clips I've reviewed that he was making calls to DCF and other agencies. Waterbury Police were never notified by this particular principal about those conditions. So this is all information that is coming out now as this case unfolds.
I believe he said he called police, but you have no record of that.
Well, I believe he's wrong if that's what he said, because there is no record of it.
Can you talk about, you said that there was some evidence that corroborates the story of the gentleman. Can you talk any more about what that is, or how do you go about corroborating a story like this that's so extraordinary?
Right. So there's some physical evidence that was seized from the house that does corroborate the fact that that room did have exterior locks on it, and a number of different styles of exterior locks, as was explained during an interview with the victim throughout the years. It appeared that the locks increased in security levels as time progressed, and obviously he became older and maybe a little bit stronger. So that's certainly one component, and then there's other components of the fire investigation that are part of the evidence package as well.
And I'm sorry if you said this, but were these the only two individuals living in that home?
Yes, there were two siblings that were in and out of the home, but they have since moved out.
So say DCF had all this information, the principal's saying, they don't share any of that with police?
You're going to have to talk to DCF about what their protocol is on when they share information with police. DCF does work closely with police departments and provides a lot of information to police departments in a number of different ways. I don't know what their protocol is on when they share that information, so that would be something that they would have to respond to.
Chief, how's the victim doing now? Obviously some serious conditions. We read about the PTSD and depression. What can you share about how the victim's faring?
Right, so obviously he's got a lot of mental health issues that he has to deal with at this point in time. There are a lot of physical conditions that he's working on as well. I mean, here's an adult that was 5'9" and 68 pounds. There's some apparent orthopedic issues. The room was very small. Honestly, when I read about it and talk to the investigators and overlook the interviews, it was worse than the conditions of a jail cell. So there's a lot of physical therapy that he'll have to go through. There's a lot of healing that he'll have to go through mentally. And I can tell you this: our investigators. And I'll specifically point out Detective Steve Brownell and Detective John Paish, who were the lead investigators in this particular case. But all the investigators, the entire Criminal Investigations Bureau, has been very supportive of the victim. They took a collection up and bought him some items to try to make life more comfortable, some clothing and some books and some things to kind of get him along the way as he goes through this process. But, our plan is to continue to support him. He's going to need a lot of support as he travels through this and tries to figure out how to navigate what has occurred and what the future holds for him.
Chief, I think a lot of people are wondering, where are his other relatives? Did no one else see this man for 20 years, that they were able to, say anything, report anything to police? Was his stepmother the only person in his life? Did he have, you said he had two siblings. Where is everyone else? Where are all the relatives?
So the backdrop is being formed, and this is again why the investigation continues. It appears that it was a very controlling situation going on regarding the victim's condition, his whereabouts, his connection with other family members, other people in the community, other friends. Information was very guarded on what was released and when he was able to see other members of the family and other members of the community. And I think that, I know from information provided in the interviews that there was a level of fear on retaliation on what would occur if information was released or help was provided to the victim by family members.
Were there any injuries as a result of the fire?
Smoke inhalation, to the best of my knowledge, I don't know if there's any long-term effects from what occurred at the fire, but on scene, he was treated for smoke inhalation.
How did he get out of the house? Did he get out of the house on his own, or did firefighters have to rescue him?
He was assisted out of the house.
Will you be identifying him at any point?
That's a great question. Not at this time, and I don't really know when, if at all.
Where's the mother?
The mother has not been involved in the victim's life.
From the beginning?
Pretty much. From all accounts, around 2 years old.
The suspect is denying all the allegations through her attorney. Has she said anything about how her stepson would be 68 pounds, for example?
Kimberly Sullivan refused to talk to us immediately.
Do you have a picture of the door lock that was taken as evidence?
I'm 100% certain that we do. I'd have to confer with the state's attorney if we were going to release any information like that at this time.
Does Kimberly Sullivan, have any prior criminal convictions?
No prior criminal history with us here at the police department.
Neighbors were telling us that if he had knocked on the window, they would have helped him. Were there any other attempts besides this fire to try to give him some help?
No, again, I don't, from what we've put together so far, no, and that's because of a fear of retaliation. I mean, he, in his room, to relieve himself, right, had this elaborate mechanism that he created where he would urinate in a bottle, and he had straws connected to the bottom of the bottle, and he found a hole in the storm window frame that he was able to put these straws through, and he did that because the storm window itself wouldn't open up, and he was fearful that if he broke that storm window or tried to open it up, that there would be some retaliation. So, I'm certainly not a psychologist or psychiatrist, but there's a lot of nuances to people that are victims and held captive, and I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done with this particular gentleman in that area to really determine all the impact and all the effects that this long-term condition has really brought on him.
I take it you haven't had a case like this before.
33 years of law enforcement. This is the worst treatment of humanity that I've ever witnessed. Right? I mean, honestly, when we first started talking about it, we really couldn't believe it. It took a lot of convincing amongst ourselves to just really accept what was going on, and it's really hard to talk about still. I mean, it's shuddering to think that someone would treat any person, let alone a family member or someone that was entrusted as a guardian or a parental figure in this way.
Mayor, just can you also share your personal thoughts and reaction, just knowing something so disturbing happened in this community?
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, it's just unfathomable that anyone could treat someone this way. As the chief said, especially within the relationship that they had, it's devastating, and we're going to make sure that the systems are working into the future to see what might have happened 20 years ago when this may have been reported. But at this point, it appears that this was just really an isolated sense, and that they were locked in there all by themselves. And through fear and intimidation, she was able to keep it secret all that time.
So when you're talking about the future and other children, other families out there, I mean, if there's welfare checks, and the kids are told to lie about being fed, I mean, what happens? Are they going to stay in these situations like he did? Or?
Well, there's limits, I would think, to what you can do. We can send people out to check and look at it. I don't know what it looked like when the officer walked into the house in 2005, what the child looked like. That's 2 decades ago. And so, it's hard. We can send people out. We can do the checks. We can make sure that teachers, and administrators are looking out for children, notice some of the telltale signs. I think we've come a long way as well in 20 years over looking for these things. things and being able to report them, requirements of what has to go to DCF if changed over that time. So I think we can continue to do it, but can I tell you that it will never happen again? I don't think anyone can tell you that, because there's a lot of things that go into this that, you know, can help keep it secret.
Where was she arrested in Southington?
I don't know. I could get you that information. I'm not sure exactly where she was arrested in Southington. You know, and it's important, you know, to piggyback on the mayor's response to your inquiry. You know, if you see something, say something. I know it's a cliche, and we talk about it all the time, but all the great work that the media and press is doing now on this particular case, in talking to relatives and neighbors and school district people. I know some have said that they've made calls, but some have said they haven't, right? So if things are peculiar, it's important to notify the police department. We will certainly look into that information and take the appropriate action. And it may take more than one time, depending on the circumstances we find when we get there. And we know that, you know, through history and through our work with servicing agencies, the victims of domestic violence especially are oftentimes reluctant to come forward. And, you know, we encourage people that are victims of domestic violence to find the fortitude to come forward, and we're here to help. We really are.
In this situation, though, it seems like, according to the police report, that his life became worse because someone reported it. And after that second DCF visit, the mother pulled him from school.
Correct. Correct.
But you still would encourage people to?
I would. I mean, because you're not going to break the cycle any other way. I mean, you know, unfortunately in this case, it seems as if an 11-year-old was taken extreme advantage of, and at that time, you know, it's very tragic that occurred, but it will never stop, right? And this gentleman suffered for 2 decades because of that. It's easy to Monday morning quarterback, but I think it's really important to never lose hope and to continue to report incidents, especially if you're a victim of neglect or a crime.
Was he in the room all the time? Because there were some reports that he was in the backyard doing chores.
He would be released from the room anywhere from 15 minutes to a couple of hours every day. You know, there were some indication during the interview that although his dad didn't do him too many favors when the stepmother wasn't around, he would stay out of the room a little bit longer.
Any motive, like any indication as to why she would do something like this?
As I said, she refused to speak to us immediately, and you know, I hope the investigation reveals more information on the reasoning and the motive on why.
Did he say anything in the interview?
No, not to really point to that, other than, you know, to describe the agony that he went through and the lack of understanding on why.
Will the sisters face charges at any point?
No, in speaking to the state's attorney's office, we don't believe so at this time. I mean, this is a very open case, very active case. It appears that so far the evidence collected and the information received reveals that Kimberly Sullivan is the sole person responsible, and we're able to charge at this point in time.
Have the daughters spoken? Have the sisters spoken at all? I don't recall them in the warrant.
I'm sorry?
I don't recall seeing the sisters, half-sisters' names or being interviewed in the warrant. Were there attempts made to reach out to them?
Well, again, we're attempting to talk to everybody in this case, yeah.
But they said no, they're not going to comment?
At this point in time, there's been no statements taken from them. Anything else?
This is crazy.
Can you just talk about the next steps in the court proceedings?
Yeah, so, obviously she's held on a $300,000 bond. There is a possibility that she may bond out. She'd have to do that at court. Mark, are we aware of her next court date?
March 26th.
Do you have that date? 26th of March? March 26th, she will appear again.
This is crazy, folks. Got Magnolia in the chat. House of Horrors, Monster Mom. I have a million names I could call this woman. This is absolutely disgusting. I'm mad, even more mad, hearing this press conference fully. The whole system failed this child. Now, the child is an adult now in his early 30s, but this started when the child was 11 years old. Authorities went to that house, the House of Horrors, and back in 2005, and didn't do anything. There was a husband there who died last year, Kregg, K-R-E-G-G, and two siblings, Jamie and Alissa. Shame on them, too. They're not victims. No way. No way. We're not buying that on JLR Investigates. The siblings are complicit in this, 100%. Because the siblings are not living in that house anymore, but they did. And they had a moral and ethical obligation to go to authorities and share that there is a malnutritioned man that is being held hostage inside that home, and they failed to do so. I don't know why they're not charged. Why isn't the siblings charged? They're complicit, right? She's charged with first-degree assault, kidnapping in the second degree, unlawful restraint in the first degree, cruelty to persons, recklessly endangerment in the first degree. She bonded out, folks. She is out on bond. I got Magnolia in the chat. Magnolia.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, so the sheriff there that was doing the press conference, it sounded to me like there could potentially be additional charges. He said that the investigation's ongoing, and to me, it seemed like he was more or less saying that they may be looking into culpability for those siblings, but it's still an ongoing investigation. Now, the boy, he's now 32 years old. And some of the reports I read, his teachers from school had said that they saw him eating from the trash at school, and they would bring him lunches because he clearly didn't have enough to eat. And they reported it. They reported the situation. Like you said, the police went out there. But a lot of these teachers that are speaking up now, they're very disappointed because they feel like nothing was done. And, we always hear, see something, say something, and they did say something, but nothing was actually done for this boy. And eventually, the family claimed that he moved to another school district. And then later, people were told that he was being homeschooled to explain his absence, I guess. And that was that. And I guess he just stayed in that room all this time. But yeah, the siblings would have certainly known, I would think, that he's upstairs with no food, wasting away, right?
One of them ran a notary business out of the home. Jamie, out of that home, Blake Street. She had a professional license. This is sick. Now, one of the reporters asked, the authorities there, they said there was a report that the kid was seen out in the yard at times. And some people might in the chat, I kind of saw, were saying, well, why didn't he run then? Why didn't he run away? Whatever like that. But there is like brainwashing probably involved here, Stockholm syndrome type of, this kid probably didn't know better because he's literally trapped in his home since he was before puberty, 11 years old. It started. This is crazy.
Well, now another thing that they said in the press conference, it also sounds like there was some threats on her part. He sort of insinuated that the siblings may have been threatened, that if they told anyone what was going on or reported anything, he seemed to say that they were worried about retaliation. And he said that the boy in the room was also worried about retaliation. And so he would do things to help, put a straw through the window, get some fresh air, but not be able to actually open the window because he didn't want to get caught. So things like that, trying to not get caught. But yeah, so it sounds like the siblings may have had some fear of her as well, and that's what they're looking into. If it was that, or just a case of them turning a blind eye, like you said.
One of the siblings, Jamie, she's listed at 27 years old. The other one, Alissa, is listed at 29 years old. He was 32, stepson to her. These siblings are adults, Magnolia. They're adults. We don't know when they actually left the house for good. They clearly knew what was going on in this house of horrors.
Yeah.
The conditions were so deplorable. I'm shocked that this man was still alive. I mean, you're talking about like Holocaust type of, your body just literally nothing left. Nothing left. What were we at? 68 pounds? 5'9"? 68 pounds.
Yeah, so for people that are asking,
it was dwindling away.
Yeah, so people are asking in the chat, just to recap, so the story is the 32-year-old man was held captive by his stepmom for over 20 years. Now, this is his stepmom that's on the screen, and she was married to his father. They had 2 kids together, but, he was her husband's son. Her husband died a little over a year ago. And they're saying that after his father died, her treatment of him sort of got worse, that he really deteriorated in the past year since his dad died. Now, as far as his mother, they did address that in the press conference, but they just said that she essentially was not a part of his life since he was 2 years old. So we don't really know where the bio mom is, but she dipped out, I guess, when he was 2.
That literally looks like a house of horrors there. For sure. What did Kimberly Sullivan do for a living? Did she work? Like, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to get details. Like, did she go to work during the day, or was she just a housewife? It lived off the husband's money. Like, what's her role each day? Is she like literally like stuck to this guy to the hip? I'm talking about the stepchild, like watching over him 24/7, 365. Why not give this kid an opportunity to go out there and be productive in society? He's 11 years old, 18 years old. Doesn't appear like he went to college. Doesn't appear like from 18 to 32 he had any job. No job, no nothing, no friends. Nobody knew about this guy. What's the point of what is she trying to do here? This dude is traumatized for life. He doesn't even know probably how society even works.
Right. Yeah. And I think with being only 68 pounds and he's 5'9", I have to imagine he may have some damage to his brain, possibly. That's very serious to be that underweight. It's kind of surprising that he survived. So I'm sure that he's going to have quite a road to recovery, not to mention the mental health aspect, like they talked about in the press conference. That's going to be quite a long road for him to recover from this.
We got a news clip here. CBS News. Man allegedly held captive in Connecticut room for decades. He set fire to the home so he could escape. Let's listen to this clip right here.
A shocking story out of Waterbury, Connecticut. You're going to want to stay with me here. Police say a woman held her stepson captive for more than 2 decades. Police arrested 56-year-old Kimberly Sullivan yesterday and charged her with cruelty and kidnapping. Police say the now 32-year-old man weighed just 68 pounds when he was discovered. He told officers he'd been held there since he was 11 years old. Prosecutors say he intentionally started a fire in his room last month in a desperate bid to escape.
He lit a fire with some hand sanitizer he recovered, some paper from a printer, and he lit that fire while he was locked in that room from the outside. He lit that fire knowing he could very well die, but he'd been locked in that room for 20 years, and for 20 years he's been trying to get out of that room.
Now, it's important to mention that attorneys for Sullivan say the allegations are absolutely not true. They claim the man was never locked in a room or restrained, and that he was provided with food and shelter.
By the way, folks, she's a coward. Monster, evil, call her every name in the book. We don't care. Let us know how you feel about this, because we don't know all the facts, but I'm already made my mind up. She even lawyered up and refused to even cooperate with authorities. As you heard from the authorities there, she's not cooperating at all. She lawyered up. She got money, apparently, because she got lawyers. You're on mute.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to mention. I mean, to me, she looks like she's well-dressed, right? I mean, I think people agree she's well-dressed. You know, some people have opinions on her makeup style.
Look, she's wearing a cross.
But
she's wearing a cross.
She is well-dressed. She's put together. She looks like she takes care of herself to some degree. So yeah, it's very interesting because she does look like she may have money. We don't know their financial status or anything like that, but yeah, it does appear that way. So I don't think that you can say she couldn't afford food for him. I mean, she can afford nice clothes and a full face of makeup all the time. So I don't think you can say that that's the issue. So what is the issue here? Why would she refuse to let this guy out, not feed him? And then I don't understand how her attorneys can possibly say that this didn't happen. I mean, he didn't just accidentally wake up one day at 68 pounds. That takes a lot of time to get down to a weight like that. So how could they possibly stand in there in court and say that this didn't happen? That's what I don't get. Like, it seems like they're saying that this never happened at all.
Poor guy, man. Dude, I'm almost ready to cry because the dude lost his whole 20s, his whole youth. He lost his whole youth, all his 20s in a house. It's going to be a long, long time for this guy to recover. It's not going to be overnight. He's a 100% survivor. We know his name. We're not going to share because the media has not shared. So until someone shares it, like authorities or something, we're just not going to do it. We're not going to do it.
Yeah. So Roxy, he's 60. When he was rescued, he was 68 pounds, and he is 32 years old, and he is 5'9" at 68 pounds. So I'm shocked that he survived. I don't know how a person can live at that low of a weight. That's like a child's weight. That's like a 12-year-old or something weighs that. Or even less.
He was literally risking dying himself by setting the house on fire with him inside to get saved. Literally, because you could die from the smoke, you could die from the flames, and he took that risk. He came to his, last hope of getting rescued by setting his own house on fire so authorities can come there, he can get saved. That's amazing resilience and bravery on his part.
But the fact that she lawyered up immediately, to me, says she knows that what she did was wrong and she was caught.
What's she gonna get, a slap on the wrist from
If
this?
she was truly innocent, or let's just say there's another explanation for his low weight, maybe anorexia or something. Like, let's say there's another explanation here. The fact that she didn't even try to offer an explanation as to why he was underweight, as to why he wanted to escape the house by lighting it on fire. Instead of offering up an alternative explanation for why this happened or how this came about, she immediately got an attorney. So to me, that implies that she knows she was caught.
We have one additional clip we're going to play here. It's by NBC 10, WJAR. Connecticut woman accused of holding stepson captive for 20 years. We're just sharing some of the local media clips here, news clips about their take on the situation. Let's play that right here, Magnolia.
Frankly, to factor something out of a horror movie, and that's without exaggeration.
A horror movie played out inside this Waterbury home for decades, according to investigators who say Kimberly Sullivan locked her stepson in a room for 20 years.
He'd been locked in that room since he was 11. He was given 2 cups of water per day. He'd been locked in there since 4th grade.
On February 17th is when prosecutors say the victim set a fire inside his 8x9 room using hand sanitizer and paper. That's when the fire department responded to the Blake Street home and found the now 32-year-old emaciated.
He lit that fire knowing he could very well die, but he'd been locked in that room for 20 years. And for 20 years, he'd been trying to get out of that room. He'd be let out less than 2 hours a day for chores under the supervision of this defendant. He'd then be locked back in that room. This victim, 31 years old, was 5'9", 68 pounds. He had a body mass index of 11%. Under 13% is life-threatening. He was in the stages of dying.
Sullivan's attorney called the accusations false and put the blame on her late husband.
He was not locked in a room. She did not restrain him in any way. She provided food. She provided shelter. She is blown away by these allegations. He was the biological father. He's the one that dictated how his son would be raised. We think as the evidence comes out, you will see that she's not the villain she's being made out to be.
Provided food? Are you kidding me? Who's that lawyer? He ain't fooling us. Provided him food. He's 68 pounds at 5'9". Provided him food and horrible shelter conditions. He was held captive. He was brainwashed. She controlled him. This is crazy. Sick. That ain't going to fly with the jury. It's not going to fly.
No, and I'm sure that they took photos of him that the jury will see. And again, she's offered no explanation. So that's how you know a crime was committed, in my opinion. It's like if there was any other explanation, she would have offered it, and she didn't.
Who is this lawyer bozo dude? Who is this guy? Who is this guy? I mean, he had the audacity to say that. We actually have a clip of her. I guess she has maybe like 2 lawyers, maybe, because they spoke outside the courthouse after she went into court here, where the judge gave her a $300,000 bond. I can't understand why it's only $300,000. Would she post 10%, $30,000?
Yeah.
So that's the going rate. You just hold a child into his adulthood hostage, captive, in prison, deplorable conditions inside a home for 20 years, and it's only $300,000? Are you kidding me? What's going on there in Connecticut? Yikes.
Yeah, and he's trying to say that it was the father's responsibility for how he was raised, but the police have specifically said that his condition deteriorated after his father died a year ago. So everything really accelerated once the father died. So that means if the father was alive still, this may not have gotten as bad. It seems like after the father died, She just started treating him however she wanted to and just left him in that room, never let him out.
Yeah, but he died in January 2024. It's 14 months later, or 12. Yeah, 14 months later. So to sit there and blame the husband, are you kidding me? He's been dead for 12 months and he was still held. And the situation, like you said, looks like he got worse.
Yeah, and if it was the father's fault, once he died, the boy's condition would improve, right? If it was the father's fault, he would improve and be more healthy now.
And it went to the point where he set his own house on fire so he could be saved. And they're going to sit there and blame the father. Are you kidding me? He's been dead for 14 months or since January 2024. That ain't going to fly either. What is wrong with this woman in her defense? What is wrong here? They ain't fooling us. We're going to call it out as is. Matter of fact, Magnolia, I'm saying we pack our bags and go up there so I can shame her on the story. I love defendants that are out on bond. She's out on bond, so she has to go in and out of that courthouse, arrive there.
Yep.
This is sick. Now, her attorneys give they speak, right? They speak outside the courthouse today, right?
Yeah.
We got that clip. We're going to share. Let's share the attorneys.
Kind of speak to whoever's asking you questions.
All right.
You mentioned that your client maintains her innocence. Can you just...
Absolutely. Yeah, so she completely maintains her innocence. From our perspective, these allegations are not true. They are outlandish. I mean, she was blown away when she heard these allegations. She's adamant they are not true. This did not happen, and we look forward to being able to vindicate her and show that she's done nothing wrong.
Can you speak on, I guess, what your stance is, what she, I guess you say she's innocent. Can you just kind of expand on that?
She's never locked him in a room. That is absolutely not true. He was not locked in a room. She did not restrain him in any way. She provided food. She provided shelter. She is blown away by these allegations. It is shocking, and what's more shocking to me is how someone can be falsely accused of such a thing.
You mentioned her husband passing away recently. Is
Correct.
he potentially someone who was
the biological father? Well, I mean, he was the biological father. He's the one that dictated how his son would be raised. We think as the evidence comes out, you will see that she's not the villain she's being made out to be. Absolutely not.
You mentioned that the allegations were being non-corroborated. How are the allegations really being brought up?
Well, the allegations seem to be based on the words of one individual and one individual alone. I did not see anything in the warrant to indicate any independent evidence to corroborate these allegations. So we'll see how they stand up at trial. I do anticipate a trial in this case, given the shocking nature of the allegations. But she's adamant. She's done nothing wrong.
Where's the boy now? Where's the...
I don't know. From my understanding, he's, based on my review of the warrant, there was no other person to corroborate any of the claims that were made. And we'll, at the appropriate time, we'll get into the motivations and the credibility of any witness.
That is correct. And so the judge did deny the request for GPS and also denied the request for home confinement.
Why do you feel like she's not a threat?
At the end of the day, first of all, Ms. Sullivan has strongly denied all of these allegations. And also what we're asking for people is to not confuse allegations for facts. This is going to be an extremely lengthy process, as most court cases are, but especially this case. There's going to be a lot of information. Sorry, to go back to your question, in terms of why Ms. Sullivan is not a threat, first of all, she has denied all of these allegations extremely strongly and adamantly. But on top of that, all of these allegations speak to one specific complainant. So these allegations, there is no threat to the whole public. At the end of the day, there is one complainant who is making these allegations.
So how does she explain the physical condition he was found in?
So at this point, we only have the information that you guys have, the arrest warrant, right? So that's basically the first step of the case, first step of the discovery. We need all the rest of the discovery before we are adequately able to assess the case, assess any valid defenses, and really see where we go from there.
Yesterday, your colleague mentioned or put the blame on her late husband, who now we know is wheelchair bound, passed away last January. How does someone wheelchair bound do something like this?
So again, we're going to need to see the rest of the information, right? The rest of the discovery before we're adequately able to assess all angles. However, what I can say is that this was the biological son of her now deceased husband. She is the stepmother. And so this father did dictate everything as to the upbringing and everything else. And
so you
that's
feel like
BS.
Other people could be responsible for whatever may have happened to this?
At this point, given the limited information we have, we don't know exactly what's going on. You know, we need to get the rest of the information. We need to get the rest of the discovery before we can adequately say and adequately assess what the valid defenses are in this case.
I mean, how is she feeling personally about what she's accused of?
As Attorney Colloidis said yesterday, absolutely shocked, okay? Absolutely appalled by these allegations, absolutely shocked.
Talk about what went on inside the courthouse today. I know they were asking for GAS and 24-hour lockdown and what you asked for and what ultimately.
Yep, that is correct. So in court today, there were some conditions that were asked from the state. The judge ultimately makes a decision for anyone, but in a situation like this, they have to decide what conditions of release will be set. So there was a monetary condition of release, bond, but then they can also set non-monetary conditions. So maybe GPS monitoring, IPS monitoring, some type of monitoring. Sometimes they do home confinement. Sometimes it's home confinement 24/7 lockdown. What my pitch was to the judge is that ultimately, because Ms. Sullivan is not a threat to the general public, that there should be no 24/7 lockdown and that there should be no GPS monitoring. At the end of the day, that is what the court ultimately ruled, and that's why the conditions that were set in place were the IPS monitoring.
Do you feel like state agencies, the school district, failed this young man?
So again, given the limited information that I have, I'm going to need to see how the rest of the evidence unfolds and what really the allegations show, what the evidence shows, and basically where we go from there.
She was arrested in Southington. Is that where she's living now?
No comment as to where she's living or where she was arrested.
Jason, can you give us your full name and spell it, please?
Absolutely. My name is Jason Spilka, S-P-I-L-K-A. I'm an attorney at the Colloidis Law Firm. That's K-A-L-O-I-D-I-S. Yesterday, you guys heard from Attorney Colloidis. Today's me.
And do you expect her to enter a plea at the next hearing?
Absolutely not, for a couple different reasons, okay? First of all, Ms. Sullivan, like I said before, has adamantly denied all of these allegations. But also, just as kind of, backstory, cases don't resolve that quickly. Cases can take months to resolve, and why? We need to gather all the information. Like I said to you guys, I only have the arrest warrant. We only have the same information that you guys actually have. So at the end of the day, there is going to be a plethora of information. There's going to be so much information that we don't have, that we're going to need to have, and that we're going to need to keep coming back to court, speak to the prosecutors. This is a lengthy process. No case resolves quickly.
And so she's not going back to the house on Blake Street then?
In terms of where she's living or where she's going, I don't have any comment to that.
I mean, just going back to the facts, or the allegations rather, of this case, a 31-year-old, 68 pounds. She's the only person living there that we know of in the last year at least. I mean, how do you...
Yeah, absolutely. What we are waiting for is the rest of the information so we can adequately determine where our valid defenses are. I mean, like I said, Ms. Sullivan, at the end of the day, denies these allegations. The way that the system works is she's presumed innocent until and if ever she's proven otherwise. So at the end of the day, all of us stand here presumed innocent until someone ever proves otherwise. What we do, we're holding the state to that burden, and we're doing it extremely aggressively. We are very prepared to aggressively defend this case on absolutely all routes and avenues that we need to.
Have you been able to speak to her stepson yet?
No, there normally isn't much contact between attorneys and the complainant or the alleged victim. But no, nothing from our side.
Jason, thank you.
So his name was, I just looked him up. His name is Jason Spilka from the law firm, Colloidis Law Firm. That's, he was admitted to practice law in Connecticut in October 2022. So he's fresh. That lawyer, what a clown. What a clown. What a clown. I don't know how she hired him or why she hired these attorneys, the Colloidus law firm. This is sick. This is absolutely disgusting here. And wow, folks, let us know your thoughts on this as we continue the conversation about, we'll call her Monster Mom, we'll call her pure evil, we'll call her the devil. You can call her every name in the book. I don't care. This is just, I've seen enough. I mean, we have the arrest report. You were going to read it, correct?
Yeah, I do. I like that there was that one reporter there at the end that asked him basically what everyone wants to know. He's only 68 pounds. She's the only one living in the house. So what are you saying here? Like, what are we doing? What are we talking about? And then he was like, oh, well, we're waiting for more information to come out. And it's like, what more information do you need than he's 68 pounds, grown man?
Oh, they're just going to blame the biological father who has been dead since January 2024. It's his fault.
Yeah.
It's his fault. And, you know, nothing to see here. Nothing happened where this guy set his own house on fire to escape. He did the right thing. But yeah, it's not her fault. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
This is absolutely crazy. Throw up that arrest warrant application. Let's go through it. Keep people informed. You're actually a better reader than me, Magnolia. What do we got going on here with an arrest report? We got the arrest report right here that has been released.
Well, it's uploading, so
yeah. This is I mean, where are all the other family members? Like these, I know there was 2 siblings in the house.
Yeah, Roxy, there were 2 siblings living in the house. They are about 5 years younger than him. Now we don't know when they moved out though. So they are both grown. They're in their 20s, but we don't know yet exactly how long they lived there. Do you have any kind of indication of how long ago they may have moved out?
I don't know, but I mean, again, the one, Jamie Marie Sullivan, Blake Street, Waterbury, Connecticut, 06708. She operated she had a professional license and operated a notary out of that house. You know, the stampers, you know, notarized documents and whatnot. Unclear when she left. I don't know anything about the other one, Alissa. All of them, they don't have social media. I couldn't find any social media profiles on the siblings. But I'm not even going to say the siblings are victims here. No way. Because if they moved out and they knew what was going on and decided to not even to share or inform police or tell anyone what's going on about the conditions, shame on them. They're complicit. They should be charged, my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to the husband that died, you know, they said he was wheelchair bound, but apparently he once used to be a fitness instructor, kickboxing.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
A wellness and fitness services that he was involved with. So what we have here is the arrest report. You want to kind of share what's going on, Magnolia?
Yeah. So the way that all this sort of unfolded is basically it starts on February 17th. February 17th at approximately 20:42 hours, the Waterbury Police Department received a complaint for an active fire in Waterbury, Connecticut, filed by Kimberly Sullivan. Officers Martinez and someone else were dispatched to the scene, as well as the Waterbury Fire Department. Upon arrival, WFD was already on the scene and began working on the active structure fire. They made entry into the residence and removed a party later identified as MV1, which would be male victim 1, who was immediately brought to AMR ambulance for medical treatment. Officer Enzatari reported that Kimberly Sullivan was standing outside and was uninjured. The WFD worked the fire and were able to extinguish the fire, which appeared to be mostly contained to the second floor. Multiple rooms on the second floor had heavy fire, smoke, and water damage from the fire. So that's what happened. He set a fire in his room. They described the room as an 8x9 in size, and he finally figured out, I guess, a way to start a fire. So they're saying the victim was in the ambulance. The officer checked on the victim while he was being treated for smoke inhalation. Upon viewing male victim 1, the officer observed that he was extremely emaciated. His hair was matted and unkempt. He was very dirty, and his teeth all appeared to be rotten. The victim was conscious and alert, although he was having difficulty speaking due to the smoke inhalation. The victim reported to the officer that he intentionally started the fire in his room on the second floor using a lighter, hand sanitizer, and paper because he wanted his freedom. He stated that he had been locked in that house his entire life. The victim stated he's been held captive at the residence since he was approximately 11 years old. It's for some reason redacted, but we know 11. The victim specifically mentioned that Kimberly Sullivan keeps him locked inside his bedroom as there is a lock on the outside of his bedroom door. The victim was transported to St. Mary's for treatment before being transferred to another facility as his condition worsened, and he was listed as being in critical condition due to smoke inhalation. I don't know if you want to read through this whole thing, but that's basically how all of this kind of came out. Is he started this fire, and this was nearly a month ago now, February 17th. And so I guess they've been investigating and went ahead and now charged the stepmom. So that's what's happening now. She's being charged, arraigned, the whole 9 yards.
Magnolia, most homes, the locks lock in the room where you not on the outside of the room.
Yeah.
And as stated there, she literally locked him into a room. He didn't have access to the locks. He's locked in. I mean, for the lawyers to say, well, he wasn't held captive and blah, 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 is absolutely preposterous and ridiculous. She locked him into a room. She had the key on the outside, lock and key on the outside. He had no access to lock and key. He's trapped. He's desperate. He wants to get out. He wants to escape, so he sets the own home on the second floor on fire, even though he knows he's risking dying, being burnt, or dying from smoke.
Yeah.
What a brave victim here.
Well, it sounds like that she was, when the fire happened, she was trying to throw him under the bus too, because in this section, it's talking about the detective asked Miss Sullivan if her son had if he had been diagnosed with any mental conditions, and Kimberly stated he has a lot of problems, but isn't diagnosed with any conditions, as he was against going to doctors. She stated that she brought him to a psychiatrist a few times, as he mentioned hurting himself in the past. Detective Peace asked Sullivan if the victim was locked inside his room, and she stated that his door is not locked and that he has free reign of the house.
Bunch of BS. She's lying.
They said that they did. It says, okay, they did, while the WFD was still actively on the scene, WFD Inspector Savila and Detective Peace did a cursory walk through the address to ascertain the origin and cause of the fire. They noticed a burn pattern on the floor of a second floor bedroom consistent with a fire being set in that location. So They went through, investigated the fire. Let's see what was next. While fighting the fire, members of the WFD had moved items around the second floor bedroom and removed the door to the room. Detective Peace observed that there is a slide lock on the outside of the door frame, which could be used to secure a door closed from outside of the room. Furthermore, he removed the door from the room. The removed door from the room has a latch that appears to match up with the location of the slide lock. So what they're saying is a slide lock, I think that's the type of lock that you have in your hotel room with the chain, you slide it. And now this is saying that there's one of those on the outside, or it's one of those things where you take that they have in a lot of bathroom stalls where you kind of lift the little metal thing and slide it back and forth. So it sounds like that may have been the type of lock that was on the outside of that door.
So she's a liar.
Yeah.
Straight liar. Everything out her mouth is a lie. But of course, they said she wasn't cooperating. But you got nothing to hide. Why don't you cooperate? Victims stating what's going on. What's she gonna throw?
And right away on this, they're saying that the detective, or the early part of the investigation, the detective reached out to her in an effort to further interview her in relation to the fire, and she refused to meet with the detective and stated that she had spoken with an attorney and will not be speaking to police. So she wouldn't even talk to them about the fire or anything else. She just completely shut them down and did not want to cooperate or answer any questions, even regarding the fire. So it sounds like immediately she lawyered up, I guess when they asked her if he had been locked in the room, that was probably her cue that she was busted.
All right, so let me ask all of you. What do you think if she's convicted? I see a conviction. It's easy here. I mean, this is a no-brainer here. Connecticut, Connecticut. What do you think the penalty should be here? I mean, we're going really far ahead. We're definitely going to follow this case all the way through. I mean, this to me is like easy, no-brainer life. I mean, she literally destroyed this. She took his youth away. She took everything to deal with 18 to 21 or 18 to 25, those crucial ages in a young adult's life. He's trapped there through his 20s. He's literally dwindling down to Holocaust nothing. And I don't want to be offensive when I say Holocaust, but that's what it reminds me of.
Well, that's how it was described by police, actually. Exactly that he looked like a Holocaust victim. So this section here is getting into the victim's interview with police. They're saying once he had recovered to a point where he could speak with investigators, 2 interviews were conducted by detectives. The first was on February 21st by Detective Peace, and the second was conducted by Detective Brownell on March 6th, which would have been just last week. Both interviews were conducted at the medical facility that the victim is recovering in. Each interview was audio and video recorded. During the 3 hours that he was interviewed, he provided details of the evolution of his life over the past 20 years that amounted to a life of captivity, abuse, and starvation. He was asked what his earliest memories were of being locked in his bedroom, and he stated his earliest memories start around the age of 11. They've already said that, so this part's redacted. They have certain things redacted, and some things are not. The family was living on Blake Street at the time, and he recalled being hungry, which led him to sneak out of his room at night to get food and fluids to drink. He stated that when the wrappings to the food he ate were eventually discovered, he began to be locked in his room. He stated that at that time, it was only during the evening hours. He recalled drinking water from the toilet at the time due to the fact that he was only getting about 2 cups of water per day. The victim then recalled how the family moved to somewhere. Victim stated that when he was in the blank, he was permanently pulled out of school due to the fact the school he was attending contacted the Department of Children and Families based on what he was doing in school. The victim stated that by this time in his life, he was always hungry. So when he was at school, he would ask others for their food, steal others' food, and sometimes eat food out of the garbage. This resulted in DCF responding to the home on 2 occasions. When they were there, he was told by Sullivan, and that's the suspect, to tell them that everything was fine. On the second DCF visit, he was pulled from school by Sullivan. The victim stated that he was provided worksheets for a short period of time, but the skill level never advanced and no one was teaching him anything. He stated that he always had a lock on the outside of his door. It evolved from a chain lock to a padlock and eventually a slide bolt lock. Not only did he demonstrate to Detective Peace how it operated, but the lock was also observed from photos obtained from search and seizure warrants executed at the residence. He added that when he first moved to address omitted, he was in an actual bedroom locked in, but was then moved to a smaller room. This area was observed during the execution of the search warrant, can be described as a back storage space on the second floor of the residence. Again, this room we're talking about was 8 by 9. 8 by 9. He stated he was only there for a short period of time, eventually being moved to a smaller room. This is where he has been since the age of 11. Or we don't know the age there, because he's saying he was moved to different rooms, different circumstances at different times. The space he was locked in was a back storage space that measured approximately 8 by 9. The space also had angled ceilings, making the space that much smaller. Speaking with the doctor, she stated that the victim stated during conversation that the space had no heat in the winter and no air conditioning in the summer. He said once he was pulled from school, his weekday routine and captivity became brutally consistent for the rest of his life. He stated that he would typically go to sleep around 7:30 p.m. He stated that he would wake up around 3 to 4:30 a.m. and would be awake for the rest of the whole day and night, noting that he did not sleep well. He was let out of his room for a limited time in the morning around 8 a.m. He stated he was tasked to complete several chores in the house, which may take him between 15 minutes and 2 hours, depending on what he had to do. From there, typically late in the morning, he was brought back to his room where he was locked there for the remainder of the day and through the overnight hours until it was time to get out and do chores again the following day. When asked how often his routine was, he stated nearly every day. Victim stated that on occasion he was let out in the early evening hours briefly. He stated there were times when he would be locked in his room for a whole day at a time, equating to 24 straight hours. He added that on the weekends he would be let out for longer periods of time. The victim stated that while Sullivan took blank to events and to see friends, blank would allow him to come out and watch television with him. I wonder if this blank is the father.
It looks like it. I'm trying to analyze this, and I'm looking at the screen. Probably
it sounds like she
yeah.
would take the other kids to do things like see friends, go to events, and he would be there then at the home with the father, and the father would let him out for longer periods of time while they were gone, and was allowed to watch TV. The victim stated there were also times when blank would let him go outside with him to work in the yard. He added that the last time he left the property was when he was approximately some age, stating that he went with blank to dump yard waste. When discussing blank dying, that's his father, he stated that his captivity and restraint got even worse. He stated it got to a point where the only time he would ever be let out of the house once his father died was to let the family dog out in the back of the property, stating that it was only about 1 minute a day. Essentially, the victim was locked in his room between 22 and 24 hours a day. He was provided up to 2 sandwiches a day, typically deli meats, peanut butter, occasionally tuna or egg salad. He describes his food becoming less and less over time. When asked if he was hungry every day, he stated, all day, every day, my entire life. Along with the limited food supply, he stated he had the equivalent of about 2 small bottles of water per day. He pointed to water bottles that were on the table during the interview. I bet it's those little bitty bottles that they put out at conventions, those little small ones. When the detectives asked why the victim never spoke with anyone about his experience, he stated that he wanted to, but there was the constant threat of longer lockdowns and further diminishment of food. He describes the life of being mentally conditioned by Sullivan. He stated that the threat was that he would not see the light of day if he told anyone, and knowing that he had little time out of his room to that point, it was not something he could risk. He also stated that he once discovered a gun while cleaning. This added to his fears of being hurt. It was unclear when in the victim's life he discovered the gun. He discussed how much of a normal day consisted of him counting cars as he looked out of his window. He stated that the thought of breaking the window, later learning that there was a storm window that could not be removed, but the victim stated that under pain of death, no one was to see me. This is what Sullivan would say to the victim. The victim stated that throughout the years, Sullivan would constantly lead him to believe that she was going to start to unlock his door and let him out more, but that she needed to see if she could trust him. The victim stated that the room being unlocked never happened. He described the evolution of his bathroom use. When he was a certain age, he was only being locked in the room during the overnight hours. A training potty chair was left in his room to use. Once he reached his blank and then into his blank, he was forced to use bottles and newspaper to dispose of his waste. He described how after he urinated into a bottle, he would have to then funnel it into a tube he created with a series of straws and then guide the straws through a hole in the window to empty it. He continued by describing how he defecated. He stated he placed newspaper. We don't need to get into all that, but yeah.
Magnolia.
Yeah, so this is just crazy.
This is just sends chills down my spine. Now I wonder if there's other children or young adults trapped in homes around the country and stuff. I will also blame DCF and authorities. They went out there, and for some reason they went out there multiple times, and for some reason nothing happened, and this was allowed to continue. Also, Magnolia, it seems interesting that, while the guy was in school, she deliberately pulled him out of school. A lot. This is what triggered them to go visit, because he was constantly hungry in school and eating other people's food, and he wanted food. He was starving.
Yeah, and so after that second time, she took him out of school altogether because he kept reporting her. So she took him out of school completely and apparently told people that he was being homeschooled. And then just went on about their business. Now this top paragraph here, he's basically talking about how he had to ration his water and different methods he came up with to clean himself. And now he's saying besides the occasional television viewing with his father on the weekends, he stated there was no other television viewing. He did not have one in his room. He recalled a time where he briefly, 3 months, 15 years ago, had a small black and white TV, but it became unusable due to advancement in technology. He stated his only real connection to the outside world was a radio that was kept outside of his bedroom. He described listening to local radio stations, and among these 3 stations, he was able to stay semi-current with world issues. He was able to learn about and follow NASCAR and UConn basketball. Along with the calendar, he stated that he utilized the radio to keep track of time. Between those 2 resources, he was able to keep track of time and the years. That's wild. That's wild. But one thing that's good about that is at least he had something to occupy his mind, but that's wild.
How about this? How about put her in a prison cell for 20 years and feed her bread and water, or feed her a couple drops of water
with no TV?
Make her drink out of the toilet in her jail cell. How about that?
Yeah.
This is insane. This is bonkers. And for her lawyers to say that she's innocent without even knowing information, by the way, because they're claiming we haven't received this and that and the other, but already proclaiming her innocence and already claiming that she's going to go to trial. This is sick.
Mm-hmm. So he's also talking about his education. He's saying, speaking with the victim and knowing that his formal education concluded in I think it's 4th grade, is what they said, 4th grade. He was able to understand everything that they talked about. Each year, he stated that he was provided approximately 3 to 4 books, and he also had a dictionary. He stated he would read the books, and each word he came across that he did not know, he would look it up in the dictionary. It was determined that the victim had ultimately educated himself. The victim discussed how he was never allowed to have friends, noting that the only time he was ever allowed to have fun was Halloween. He remembered the last time he was allowed to go trick-or-treating on Halloween when he was blank, recalling his last costume being a firefighter. That's interesting.
Yeah, considering a fire at the home.
Yeah. He stated that blank were allowed to have friends, but the friends were not allowed over to the house, stating he was their secret. Stating, I have been kept a secret my entire life. Regarding other potential visitors to the house, the victim stated there was hardly anyone who came to the house, and if someone did come, he was told not to make a sound. So there you go. He's saying that he was not allowed to have friends, but his siblings were. However, his siblings were not allowed to bring their friends to the house because he was a secret.
Yeah, and the siblings, I'm assuming the siblings are probably do you know if that's like her actual children, or are they stepchildren also? Do we know? Do we know about
it's her children with her husband, the 2 younger.
Gotcha.
And then he was the son of her husband from a previous relationship. So, there's a lot of studies out about relationships with step-parents and stepchildren, and it is unfortunately very typical for a stepmother to be unable to bond with their stepchildren. It's almost scientific. It's not uncommon to hear about a stepmother who just never takes to the kids, right? That's common. We hear about that all the time. But most of the time things work out okay. I think most people in blended families come up with something that works for them. They get along somehow. I'm sure there's fighting, disagreements, bickering, especially with teenage girls, things like that. But you don't lock the step kid in a room, in a closet for 20 years. Like this is on like a level that people really can't fathom, I don't think. I mean, to keep a human being in your attic or whatever, it's like extremely diabolical. It's very disturbing. It's also disturbing to hear him describe that he was their little secret. That's creepy. That's very creepy that his siblings were told to keep him as a secret and no one can find out about him. That's pretty creepy stuff there. That doesn't even really scratch the surface.
Yeah. Wow. So what we'll do is we'll continue. Let's show her face moving again and everything like that, and show everyone that's coming into the chat the house. And we put together a little clips here. We're gonna stay on this story for sure. Maybe she comes out and talks. Maybe she'll give statements. Maybe she'll go on TV and give her versions. I pretty much doubtful. She's out on bond, $300,000, Connecticut, Waterbury, Connecticut. We will definitely be following this case. I so want to go to the courthouse and at least go to one of these court hearings. Trial. I mean, it sucks that she wouldn't even accept responsibility. It's going to force this individual to come and testify. That's shameful in itself too. Why don't she just own up and admit what she did? It's hard. It's horrible.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like she's going to do that. To claim that she's blown away by the allegation is it's absurd. And I don't see any way out for her on this, because it's like the reporter said to her attorney, basically, like, how else do you explain the fact that he's only 68 pounds and she's the only other person living in the house? How do you possibly explain that? You can't. So, he's already given his statements. They've already corroborated his story about the lock on the outside of the door. The room itself also was pretty filthy. I thought I had a picture of the room itself. I don't have it right now, but it was just in disarray. In these areas in Connecticut, like I'm very familiar with this area. I lived fairly close to Waterbury for a while. It's very quiet. I mean, the way these pictures are showing, this is how it looks. Everywhere up there looks just like this. They all have these same houses that look like this. It's quiet. It's you don't really have, there's not a lot of like crazy crime and stuff like that. It's very quiet. So I'm sure the neighborhood is just absolutely horrified to learn that this has been going on under their nose for 20 years.
So I'm going on realtor.com. The home is estimated value at $321,000. It's a 4-bedroom, 1.5 bath home, 1,700 square feet, built in 1886.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
it says last sold in 1991.
Yeah, so that would have been when they moved there. And that would have been what, 34 years ago. So, yeah.
Wow. It's right off of Interstate 84 and Highway 8. Yeah, we're going to follow this case for sure. We'll stay on it on JLR Investigates. We'll hold her feet to the fire for sure. Anything else that breaks out of this case in particular, like any other key details, new details, maybe the victim speaks. If the media, and the authorities put out the victim's name, we'll share that, but we're not going to share him. Definitely, he's probably has a long road of recovery, and we're hoping for the best. He's going to have to testify. That's going to take a lot of courage, and hopefully this guy's getting all the milkshakes and all the food he can eat right now.
Well, he seems pretty courageous to me. I mean, it's a pretty courageous thing what he did, especially, you know, to have the strength to even do something like that when he is literally emaciated. You know, I guess he just reached the point that he could tell, you know, they said in that courtroom, they said he was in the process of dying. He was literally dying, and he probably knew that. He probably knew he was going to die. And so it was either die like this or take a chance and burn the place down and see if I can get out. And that's what he did. So that's pretty brave. That's pretty courageous already. He told police right away what happened, gave his whole account of everything. Now, we do know he is still in a hospital setting. We don't know where exactly, but he is working on his recovery, and he just interviewed with police again 1 week ago. So he'll hopefully be on the mend and be able to give a you know, keep talking, and maybe one day he'll be able to share his story himself.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Thanks for watching the channel Magnolia and JLR Investigates. We'll stay on it. Anything else breaks, you will hear it here on JLR Investigates. We'll talk soon. Thanks for watching, everyone. Any final words, Magnolia?
No, we'll see everybody shortly.
Have a good day, everyone. Be safe out there.